Emmy Rossum plays Angelyne in Angelyne. I'm Matt Noble of Gold Derby, and I want to start off by asking you, Emmy, a question about something Angelyne says. She says people see who they want to see when they see her. Who do you want to see Angelyne as?
An icon. And I think the fact that her self-mythologizing over the last decades has worked hand in hand with other people's kind of attempts to co-opt her narrative and tell her story for her is so fascinating. So I see a kaleidoscope of stories about a person that kind of form this larger than life myth. But my largest takeaway, I suppose, would be a really unexpected feminist, somebody who was completely in control of her womanhood, her physical presentation, and who really kind of took over the patriarchy in a way, the media kind of landscape when she originally rose to fame, and who paved the way for so many women who came after her and kind of created influencer culture.
Do you do you think that's how she would want to be seen as well? Do you think that aligns?
I think she considers the pursuit of fame to be survival. And while she alludes to various different sorrows and traumas in her past, tells lots of different stories about what those might be. So it's fun to play with all of those different possibilities. But I think she's like a phoenix in a way, kind of rising from the ashes. And while she has moments of kind of like childlikeness and vulnerability, she's also a shark and a businesswoman and knows what she wants and won't stop at anything to get it.
What's the biggest challenge for you, Emmy, in playing her?
Oh gosh. Well, firstly, playing somebody that's so that sounds, that moves, whose body is so completely different than yours, and playing them over the course of 50 years and aging in both directions. Very, very challenging. Also the mannerisms and the kind of different Betty Boop voices that she speaks in, and the physical mannerisms are herself so practiced, but feel so effortless. And it took many thousands of hours, quite literally, of practicing voices and accents and movements in order to get to the place where it would not feel like a put on, where it would feel really totally ingrained, where I'd find myself in the kitchen doing all these little things that suddenly just somehow became part of me. Yeah, which is weird when it starts to overtake you and it's doing you, you're not doing it anymore. And you're like, whoa.
Yeah. You say, like, you know, the little mannerisms and things you're trying to get into can sort of overtake you, can also just like her sort of the way she thinks about things and the way she her philosophies to life and stuff, can that also start to infiltrate you as a person as you're sort of inhabiting this role?
Sure. I think and this is just something about me as an individual, is I have a little bit of an osmosis problem. Whether it's with people around me or a character that I'm playing, it tends to kind of be this thing where it just tends to kind of wash into me on like a cellular level. So yeah, I think while I had to put some of that away, because when you come home, you have to come home. You can't lose yourself. But I like to tippy toe right up to the edge and gaze into the Grand Canyon and lean a little and then pull myself back.
Yeah. Is she a character you found easy to relate to and connect to, or was it a sort of was it a big departure from who you are as a person, Emmy, to inhabit this character?
Very big, very, very big. Yeah, it did not feel at all familiar, the way in which I present myself or how I approach things, or she has this very almost just blind belief in herself. And quite honestly, I needed some of that to rub off on me in order to do this role, because it really did feel like Everest.
Yeah. Yeah. With you know, and what was the most sort of helpful thing for you in climbing that Everest?
I think I mostly went to the things that she had told me, or I went to the text of the things that she had actually said, a lot of which ended up finding their way into dialogue. Because in wanting to return a lot of the kind of mystery to her that we felt that had been kind of taken away from her, with the Hollywood Reporter's article, you know, pertaining to have solved her past and her mystery. I think her response to that was so interesting, calling into question the veracity of that article, but also refusing to deny any specifics or contradict any specifics, because she knows that, right, that rumor mill kind of fuels her fame. So I suppose going back to the text and looking for the emotional honesty and the clues in the things that she has been saying all along, the truth about her, and going after that kernel of honesty. I mean, she talks about the world being pain. She talks about wanting to escape her body. She talks about wanting to be a two-dimensional image, wanting to be beautiful, wanting the love of the world, wanting to be an attention bubble, liking to be on a billboard so that she can be beautiful and adored but not touched. All of those things I find to be incredibly powerful, but also very poignant. And I think there's a real like aggressiveness in the way that she presents herself visually, and also such a tender softness in a lot of the things that she's saying once she has your attention, because you can't really look away. She says things that are quite deep and profound. So I think it was connecting to the person at the emotional center of her. And I would say the most challenging thing was also, while I had kind of videos and kind of blueprints and dialogue that I could point to that are from reality, yeah, right, from the time that she's in her, 20s and until, present day. Before that, who Angelyne was before this kind of chrysalis butterfly transformation. That for me, imagining a lot of that just from photographs, not knowing what her voice really sounded like before, having to kind of fill in the blanks a lot of there, wondering what that aching, yearning physicality was, to not want to be in your body, to want to be in a superhero body, but all day long, every day, to have that feel right to you, kind of trying to figure out what that voice and that body and what that soul was and how that connects to where she is over a 50-year period. It was a fascinating journey.
Yeah. What do you think her biggest strength is, and what do you think her biggest weakness is?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I suppose her strength is perhaps in the fierce protectiveness over her image, almost like the Wizard of Oz, right? Like she is both the controller of the experience and the experience itself, which is kind of like this magical fantasy thing. But I think also in wanting that control, you can't quite scale the experience as much as, say, a social media influencer today who is really giving so much away. And there is no mystery about that kind of approach. I think her biggest strength is that she was able to, I mean, she has the tea leaves. She could see the future. She knew that there was veracity and a career in being celebrated for being yourself, just being a celebrity for being celebrated for being yourself. I think that's she was way ahead of her time.
Yeah, but like I like the Wizard of Oz comparison. Pay no attention to the woman behind the billboard.
Exactly.
But yeah, it's really good. Emmy, what do you think is actually? Do you have a favorite? Like, was there a fun moment filming the show, or just something that you go back to when you think back on your time on the series that sort of brings some joy, or puts a smile to your face?
Certainly, descending from a pink moon. Fabulous kind of camp dance numbers, but then also like the tenderness of moments. At the end of, I think, the third episode, where Angelyne has an out-of-body experience and is in her trailer meditating at a time when her fame is really, really taking off in such a big way. And she's losing some of the control, and she's reminding herself that she's not a woman, she's an icon. She's not a woman, she's an icon. And in that way, she's impervious because she's feeling vulnerable and scared in that moment. And I remember being so deeply emotional in that scene. And there was a small piece of PVC piping that was up my nose to change the shape of my nose, and it flew out of my nose in that moment. So that take was unusable. But I just, the amount of kind of equipment that was on my body by these incredible artists to tell the story, helps tell the story. But then you're, really doing a lot of kind of emotional acrobatics as well. And sometimes the appliances fly off your body.
Yeah. Does that sort of like, having all these apparatus and things, like, does that help you get in character, or is that like a bit like something else that you have to add on on top of all the sort of emotional sort of stuff you're trying to tap into?
I think it's like a cherry on top, but it really, anytime you're playing a role, there's all these people that are helping you tell that story, and you never just like roll in your own clothes. So there's always some level of doctoring you up, right? This is just like this is the Olympic version of this. Sometimes, when I'm in contemporary day makeup playing her, at an older age, it was 7 hours before I would go to work. So we would get there at 1:30 in the morning, and be listening to podcasts that had come out on the East Coast in the morning as we're kind of easing our way into the day. But it does, I mean, having that level of artistry, work with you on something to tell that story it's a gift. You can't do something like this without that. But you also, it doesn't do the job for you.
Do you have like what's something you learnt through making this series as an actress?
I felt completely liberated from any kind of fear. I had to liberate myself completely from the idea that some people might not take her seriously, that to some she could be perceived as a joke. To me, she was never a joke. And this is a highly intelligent, intense character, a really kind of fearless woman in a way. And I had to be equally fearless playing this character, at the same time as realizing that if you desire that amount of control over your life and over your image, that's coming from some kind of level of anxiety and needing control. And so kind of balancing that and having that kind of like ticking engine, and that always being the smartest person in the room at the same time as kind of like playing the Marilyn Monroe kind of dumb blonde that she often does to kind of get the upper hand. It's challenging on a lot of levels.
You said before that like this was a huge departure for you to play this character. At the same time, is there something that you can relate to as an actress in Hollywood about, or an actor, sorry, in Hollywood, about taking like this idea of wanting to be taken seriously and needing a certain fearlessness and sort of this whole control over image and things like that? Is that something you could like relate to?
I think the bit that I that I related to was more the story in the Hollywood Reporter had posited a theory that she was the child of Holocaust survivors. And for me, the potential, although that, in a complicated way is not something that Angelyne acknowledges. The tenderness that I felt towards that part of the story, the idea that perhaps historically she had been Jewish, that had been in a part of her identity that no longer felt right anymore. But I think that it was at times in my life frightening to own that part of my identity with all of the kind of peril that comes with being a persecuted people. And I think that that part of the story felt quite tender to me. And also the desire to feel freedom within a character, to have that feel more right. I certainly have been somebody who's, spent the majority of my life playing other people, never really stopping to wonder, who am I? Until, more recently when you have a child and you have to think about those things. I think the fact that she was able to find something that felt right to her, an image, a voice, a way of expressing herself that felt really authentic to her. I think that that's really admirable, and I admire that. I can also imagine the seduction of losing yourself within a fantasy narrative.
Yeah. And what did you sort of lose yourself in with this one?
Everything.
Yeah.
Everything. Yeah. I mean, we started it before the pandemic. We finished it after. There was a pandemic and a baby in between. It was different when I approached it the second time because it was almost like coming back for season 2. I felt like it had been in my body so long. I felt real freedom with it. I also felt like it was such a gift so many productions didn't get to finish, that it was such a phenomenal gift that I got to finish this and see this over the finish line. It was the first time that I really felt I'm gonna go for it, and I'm gonna go pretty far. And if I lose myself, I know I have great people on set like Lucy, our director, Dallas, and our showrunner. They'll pull me back. They've got me. When I'm leaning over the Grand Canyon, they'll grab my hand.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. I kind of wanted to ask you, is there a performance that you saw growing up that made you want to get into acting?
I was surrounded by so many theater performances at the opera, and my cat just jumped over the baby gate.
Oh, lovely.
Hey, what's up? And I saw so many very hyper melodramatic, so incredibly committed performances. And I think they really inspired me. I loved the idea of playing pretend every night and going to a, modern kind of production one night and a kind of 1800s production the next night. And watching those kinds of performers like Denise Graves or Placido Domingo do Pagliacci, that kind of stuff, just watching it, you're really close when you're arm's length away. And I was a kid watching that, 7, 8 years old. So watching that and not even really understanding so much of what they were singing about, the idea that anytime you do a role, you're speaking kind of in a language that is not yours, right? And kind of making it your own and telling that story and live to an audience. And I don't know, it was, I think that the idea that you could switch into so many different modalities over the course of even 1 week and be equally committed in each lane, I just loved it. I thought it was really addictive.
Yeah. From icons on the stage to icons on a billboard. Emmy, what if you were to say, sort of crystallize what is special about Angelyne, what would you say is that magic thing about the show?
I think Angelyne is so unconventional because it's not at all a biopic. It's really an examination of fame. And this very unconventional woman that is Angelyne, who exists in all of these different narratives that not only has she told herself, but other people have told about her. So somehow this woman feels equally authentic when she is descending from a pink moon in a dream sequence, levitating out of her body, or kind of flying in a magical car, and also pushing back in a negotiation for more billboards. Or pushing back against the idea that she slept her way to the top. I think that, she's just a fascinating figure. And I think the show is pretty wild.
Yeah. Well, Emmy, all the best of luck for the Emmy Awards that are coming up later this year. People watching this interview can go to goldderby.com to make your own awards predictions and watch other interviews with Hollywood contenders. And Emmy, thank you so much for taking time to speak with us today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate it.